Hello, this is Guy Barker here, and I'm going to give a quick demo of how a C# app can call an Azure text-to-speech service. And here we are at the Azure portal, showing a dashboard with an Azure speech service that I set up earlier. And it's through this speech service that the app will perform text-to-speech. So I'm going to switch to the app code now. And here we are. This is the demo code in the Solitaire app. That's the AI4ADemo5 app. And the code in here for text-to-speech has actually been copied from a sample at GitHub. The reason why I've done that is that today, October 2018, there is no handy C# SDK which would only make a few lines of code to access the text-to-speech service. So what I've done is copied the sample code from GitHub, and it's Azure Samples Cognitive Speech TTS, and it's in Cognitive Speech TTS here in a C# folder, and there are two files of interest. There's TTS client.cs and TTS program.cs. So basically I pretty much copied the code from those two files into my app. Now the file TTS client.cs, I actually left pretty much all the code as is. I changed the namespace that I was using, and that was about it. But for the other code in that CS file that I copied in, I did tweak that to be something I could use in my own app. And basically, this code is what calls the TTS client code. The TTS client code wraps a lot of the web-related requests going up for the accessing the service. So here we are in the text-to-speech service .cs, and there's three pieces of information that I need to put in here that will make it possible for me to access my specific speech service. One is the TTS authentication URI, and that's something I can get from the Azure portal for the speech service. So I'll click the speech service that I created earlier, and I'll click the overview. Okay, now the first thing I'm going to need is the endpoint for my app to actually perform the authentication. So I'm going to copy that endpoint to the clipboard, and then I'm going to switch back to my app and paste in this endpoint for the authentication. The next thing I need is a key to perform that authentication. Now, this is where I need to be a bit careful, because earlier I copied in the subscription ID, which is not at all the key. So I'm going to go to Manage Keys and click on the Show Access key there. And here we have the key that I need for accessing the, performing the authentication with the service. So I'll copy that to the clipboard. Okay, paste that in my app. Okay, and the final thing I need is actually an endpoint that will perform the TTS for me. The earlier endpoint was related to authentication, but then I need to make a request once authenticated. Now, to get that endpoint, I'm going to switch to docs.microsoft.com and a page called Use Text-to-Speech in Speech Service, because this page has a list of endpoints associated with regions. Now, when I created the Azure Speech Service to use earlier, I specified a region of West US, so I want the endpoint that's associated with that region. So I'll copy that to the clipboard and paste it in. That's pretty much it. We're good to go. There's a function here I created called Speak Now, which performs the authentication using the details, just paste it in, and later goes ahead and actually requests the text-to-speech. And this is code that is pretty much copied from that sample that I mentioned at GitHub. Now, I do need to make sure this function is called by the app. So what I did earlier is I updated the app code to call that function. And where I put this call was actually after some speech-to-text action had been taken at the app. In an earlier video, I demonstrated this code, how I could speak to the app and call the Azure speech-to-text service. In this case, it's actually calling a custom speech service as a setup. And once the recognition is complete, I'm actually going to have the recognized text echoed back to me through the TTS, through this call here. So I will switch back to the text here. I've got a breakpoint where I perform the authentication, and I'll build and run the app. Okay, now I'm at the app. I'm going to perform the action to have it start listening for speech. This is a demo of the AI for Accessibility program. Okay, now we've broken at the point in the code where we're going to perform the authentication to access the text-to-speech service. And before I actually run that, I just want to check what speech we want to be spoken, what text we want spoken, and the text is, this is a demo of the AI for Accessibility program. So the earlier recognition of my speech worked satisfactorily there, and I will now step through the code. Okay, we have successfully accessed the TTS service. I'm going to set up a few event handlers here so that when we have the audio for the speech available, we'll have an event called. Also set up an error handler if something went wrong. And then we've reached the point where we're actually going to tell the service to do its work. And this is actually going to be done through the code in the file ttsclient.cs. And I do set up all sorts of interesting things here related to the service. One is the endpoint we'll actually be calling. Other things like the text itself, the gender, the locale of the voice to be used. The voice name is a very important one because that says there's a long list of basic voices I can use and which one do I want. I've gone for an ENGB voice, but there's many other voices to choose from. So I'm going to hit F5 now and see what happens. Okay, now where are we? We are in the Play Audio event handler that I set up earlier. So the idea is now the TTS has performed its work, and we now have a stream containing the audio for the speech we want output. And the text-to-speech service does not actually output that audio itself. It's up to the app to decide how best it wants to. And I've set up with this code, I've set up a media player object to actually perform the output of the audio. So I'll hit F5 now.
This is a demo of the AI for Accessibility program.
Okay, and that was that. So I'll switch back to the app. That was a demo of how a C# app can perform text-to-speech through the Azure Speech Service. And in this particular case, I use the Azure Custom Speech to perform speech-to-text on my own speech input, and then have that echoed out using the Azure text-to-speech. Thank you.